President Dr. Julius Marabio last week engaged citizens in a live broadcast town hall meeting, national town hall meeting, asking questions directly from the audience and from across the country on 1 year into his Big Five game changers: the economy, foreign affairs, peace and national cohesion, and made a civic call to action. An event that was organized by the Ministry of Information and Civic Education. The widely received interactions, which saw the president talking genuinely from his heart, also presented a groundbreaking opportunity for participatory governance that allowed him to account for his stewardship after the first year of his second term, explaining government's promotion of transparency and civic participation, among other things. This morning, to discuss the outcome of the National Town Hall meeting, we have in the studios the Minister of Information and Civic Education, Cheruno Ba. We're similarly expecting a political analyst, Dr. Charles Silva, and also Thomas Dixon, who is a journalist. But Silva, it's a pleasure having the studios as always.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
How will you classify the National Town Hall meeting?
Historic. I will use the words historic.
How will you classify the National Town Hall meeting, which you moderated last week?
Well, thank you again. The town hall was historic, was unprecedented, and was hugely successful by any and every measure. I don't think I can recall a time when a national leader in Sierra Leone took center stage and calmly, thoroughly, substantively responded to direct questions from citizens for a period exceeding 2.5 hours. That's one. Two, the questions came from ordinary citizens. My commitment I made here was every question, people can check it. Every question came from citizens. About 1,000 citizens ended up sending their questions. Three, the unprecedented levels of coverage. We're gathering the numbers now. On AYV platform alone, we had thousands of people watching online alone, not just the national television. We were live on every single community radio station, at least two community radio stations in every district in the country. Every major national radio and television station carried us live. And so the people of Sierra Leone got an unprecedented access. They saw a president who was inclusive, who believed in transparency, who believed deeply in education. Because sometimes we ask him a question about agriculture, he will go back to speaking about education and his vision for this country for human capital development. We saw a president who was unafraid to confront difficult questions. When I came here, a lot of people said, it's all going to be just questions that have easy softballs. I tell you what, many of the diplomats told me they were pleasantly surprised at the quality of the engagement. We talked about peace and national cohesion. We talked about hate speech, including from people in his party. He confronted those questions. I asked him, how are you going to make sure that young people take on this agriculture issue? Because that's a question that came online repeatedly. We spent a lot of work trying to really break these things down so that we are reflective of the breadth of questions we had. And in the room, people were asking him about potentially controversial subject, census, which is coming up. And he was not just asked, why census? How can you make sure it's more inclusive? That's not a question that we have our leaders speaking to often in this country. And then they don't get more controversial than the issue of FGM. If we were filtering, as some people want to claim, if this was just some stage-managed issue, we will not talk about the critical issues that His Excellency was able to address throughout. He talked about how is he holding his ministers to account. So the breadth, just the extraordinary breadth of it. We've not even yet been able to put it all out in terms of, we do the short clips from our ministry, because we're going to spend a lot of time to ensure that the people of this country have access to that information, because it's not every day. And I'll tell you one more thing, my brother. We were supposed to do this for an hour and a half. When we had that technical glitch when the fire, apparently there was some minor incidents that tripped our connection. His Excellency turned to me and said, you know what, it's not every day we get to do this. Let's go as long as we can. It was his decision, because we had scheduled the program for an hour and a half. You guys, you all know that because you were all partnering with us. He decided that this is so important and this is it's such a huge moment. He was in the moment and said, we need to make this a tradition and we need to continue to talk to people and we should do it. Once I'm here now, let's just do it. And he went without taking any breaks, without asking to go to the bathroom. I was struggling on that stage. I was coughing, I was struggling, I was sick the day before. But I was inspired by a leader who believed in this and who was willing to continue to engage.
Sibas, you rightly mentioned, I'm sorry, this is a session that lasted for over 4 hours. Again, when the president started, he said, this is family talk.
Correct.
And it is frank talk. Let's talk, Sir Leone. He started off with the environment, the issues that are happening with our environment.
Correct.
For which he said, it should be a collective responsibility. And there were some firm and stern warning that he gave whosoever, including himself, that if his property is found in whatsoever area, demolition exercise will commence as soon as possible. There are indeed a lot of commendations from the public. But concern of the public rests on the questions, particularly the questions that were asked on that day. Just a clarification. Was it a paraphrase of the barrage of questions that were received, or were these questions that were coming directly from Minister Siba?
Each and every question we asked was a question that came from citizens. We grouped them. And we presented a graphic online, and I was very clear. There were 1,000 questions. We couldn't ask His Excellency the President 1,000 questions. We gave him a chance to respond to the issues that are in the minds of citizens. They cared about climate, the rains, and what we were doing, and whether his government was serious about breaking down property and ensuring that the people that had built illegal structures would be taken care of. He responded to that. They cared about feeds alone, whether it was serious, what resources we were putting into it, and the strategies we were making. They cared about how we're going to end importation of foreign rice and support our local production of rice. They cared about how it's going to mobilize young people to be part of. So these were the themes of the question, and we use representative questions from people. And what I did was, when asking the question, I added flavors from other people that had asked similar questions, so that if you're listening at home, you're like, oh, that's my question. Oh yes, I asked something like that. That's what we did. And we grouped those questions, we presented them to His Excellency. Again, the point of it, the point of what we experienced on that day, what we had, as I said, is not to ambush His Excellency. It was not to say, oh, we got him. It was not a gotcha situation. It was really to provide an opportunity for citizens to have unfiltered access to the first gentleman of this country, to say they elected him and he's accountable to them. And that's something he wanted. The sense of transparency, the sense that we can ask him questions and he can sit there and we can watch him think about it. We can see his thought process. We can see the leader that we elected, what he's thinking, what his vision. And we complemented that information with this was an information fair. From the beginning, when we had the host of AYV and SLBC interviewing people and asking depth questions from people like myself and other ministers, to all the panels that we had there with all the numbers, to the slides that were going on with all the numbers about what we've achieved, to what His Excellency launched, the magazine. We launched a magazine that is incredibly detailed. Every single one of the big 5 areas, we put numbers in there. And we challenge people to look at it, and we're going to publish the magazine tomorrow online. Look at it and challenge us. Ask us questions. Say, oh, this is not true. No, everyone on feed salon and education, on this, we put the numbers. It's never happened here before. But it's not about taking credit. It's about advancing our democracy. It's about creating a new culture a culture of transparency where citizens have a right to information, and that information is provided by the people that serve them. That's what my vision has been. That's what His Excellency's vision is. That's what my task is as Minister of Information.
Would you quickly talk on the participatory process there in the National Town Hall meeting? Many have the view that the sitting position as to the people who were supposed to ask the question was stage managed, because the minister already knew the location where the people who were asking the questions were sitting.
Because all
how's that
questions
case?
came online ahead of time. We've been transparent on that. We're not going to organize a town hall with His Excellency the President and not know and have hoodlums sitting there and people screaming and shouting. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do the first town hall where we knew these questions had come online. We knew the people who wanted to ask these questions, and we said, yes, we'll hand you the mic. And as I said, we'll give you very specific time to ask your question. And yes, we had to place them somewhere so that the cameras, it was also a production. We had television. We had the whole world watching us. We had to produce it. We didn't want, question. Oh, yes, back. Yeah, there. Oh, we didn't want that. And we own that. I say to everybody who asks these questions, who are making these comments, check out any town hall. Check out Obama's town halls. Check out the town hall in Kenya that they just did, by the way, after we did ours here. Check out town hall in the UK and everywhere. No leader on earth organizes a town hall and just walks in there and says, oh, let's do this by the fly. Not when it's co-produced with a media house. No media house will do that. You have to make sure that it's structured, it's organized, and you have rules that everybody must abide by. And that's what we sought to do. That's what it was about. Nobody, all the people who are commenting and asking these things cannot comment on the substance. I'm hugely disappointed in some of the activists and advocates for a transparent society. You cannot be one stage saying, oh, I want us to have an open governance. You cannot call for the president and think it's only credible if you did it. That's not democracy is not about me. It's not about you. It's not about Fabian. You can't say, oh, we want the president to. So you must start from a premise of, oh, this is a good move. We now have a president who's beginning to create a culture that maybe once a year he comes forward, and there are multiple ways that he does that. But just to see him on that stage for 3 hours without paper, take on these questions, it doesn't happen here. And then these activists for good governance, for transparent open spaces, start writing, this is how it ought to have been. We should have done it. It's really disappointing. It means your ego gets ahead of what the substance is.
Turner, for the purpose of accountability and transparency, let's start off with the budget. What did it cost the nation for the town hall meeting?
The budget for 1 year engagement for His Excellency was about 1 million for all our 1 year engagement. That's include production of the magazine, all the time we spent collecting, putting things together. The town hall itself was less than 500,000. 500,000, I think, new Leones, I guess.
Which is 500 million old Leones.
Yes, old Leones, yes, for the town hall itself, and that includes, all the production work that we did, all the, as I said, the magazine. That includes kind of producing the video, paying sound system, stage, all the setup. Journalists that we had to get there, we had to give them transportation and all of that. We invited a lot of people, including school students.
That's a good thing, because myself as a journalist who was there part of the coverage, disclaimer, I didn't sign for any transportation refund.
Correct, because you are
Let's put that out there.
Because you are a co-host of the event.
Yes.
You were part of AYV's generous contribution to advancing a public debates in this country, which is a culture that AYV, I'm sure, is very proud of, and the work that you have done. And thank you again for your support. But there are some of the journalists that cover us every week, for example, at the press conference. Every week we give transport. So that's all part of the debate, part of the resources. So it's
just
important.
For clarity and to avoid misinformation, to clarify, you say you spent about 1 million for the
entire
1 year.
1 year.
That 1 million is about 1 billion
Correct.
old Leones.
Correct.
Okay. On the line of questioning, another concern has been it would have been greater to probably from time to time perhaps take out your iPad and read out, for example, Ibrahim Kaloko from Botown had XYZ. He said this, like read out specifics, because out of the thousand, sorry, messages and that came through, it cannot be 1,000 of people who do not respect the president who would ask perhaps frivolous questions or
All,
with
in fact,
volatile language.
almost
At least
all
there
of the
could have
questions
been
were solid.
one or two who were constructively put. Couldn't it have been more connected to the citizens if some of those whose questions were not vulgar could have been read to say Ibrahim Kaloko from Bo said XYZ, giving it a personal touch and a confirmation to people to say, yes, it was what you sent in the portal. So now how do people confirm that what you were reading, well, what you were asking is a reflection of what was asked?
So there are two things to say about this. One is to commend the citizens of Sierra Leone. People are reasonable, and people are generally very polite in this country. We put open platforms up on Slido, on Google Forms, our 818 number. 99% of the questions are decent, upright people seeking information. The citizens of this country are decent people. I've always believed in that. So that's one. Two, I can assure you, Fabian, if we said today, if we did on that day, if we decided that we're going to do exactly what you just said, the same people that tweeted, all of them without exception, will have found something wrong with what you just said. That's the problem with our culture. Every single one of them will have said, then just pick the supporter, they don't see that person, they name, This is the problem with our culture, okay? So what I have decided and what we have decided as a ministry and as a government is to focus on the substance. But it's true, but as I keep referring you, anybody who wants to verify can. The questions are still online and they will remain online. So if you want to check that Minister Siba is saying the truth or not, you can go online, it's slido.com, you can look at the flyer that we sent out, there's a link on there, and you go online and read everything that was sent and see the direct question in terms of the words, the tones, and yes, I put them together, I grouped them, that citizens ask. I agree with you that a part of it, there's a value in saying John Conte wants to know this. I don't disagree with that. That's why we try to mix it up, where we did a majority because there were so many questions and we're not trying to satisfy one John Conte. We wanted to satisfy as many people as possible who put in their questions into this platform. For my press conferences, for example, I have one commitment because the questions are not many often. I ask them all. And I read through every single question that comes through on the platform. And then I ask the people who are responding to respond. Sometimes, in fact, I group them and I send it to my panelists in advance. But when I'm on the platform, I still read all of them. I could not read 1,000 questions. It was practically impossible to do that. So what we did was to mix it, to say, I group these questions. I make sure the president is talking because President Bill, you don't have him every day. You want him to address the issues, not just focus on just Phoebe and Leone, but broadly Phoebe and Leone and everybody else where they think like Phoebe. And those questions reflected citizens' views in general. And then we said, no, we also have to have some personal voices in the room. We turned to 5 people in the room, each of whom had their questions, and none of them was an easy question. None.
One of the highlights of the town hall meeting was the lady whose excerpt from the portion had gone viral about the encounter and the struggle wanting to ask the question, your response to her, the president's response. What are your regrets in that situation?
That's a really good question. When we make rules, we must stick to them. My biggest regret, first of all, is that she was allowed into the hall when she was already 1.5 hours late before coming into the hall. if she had not been allowed, if we had respected the rules.
To not to not interrupt you there, but I thought the protocol was once president is
Correct.
in and seated,
But after-
no one
during
comes
the
in.
break-
So how did it happen
So
that
that's one
president was there
That's
and
one-
she came some hours late?
That's one.
Something's
that's
not
why
adding up.
I'm saying that's one regret, because the people who are in the hall, we wanted to make this truly exceptionally inclusive. We had an overflow room outside, and people were there, and we had a big screen. People who were late were supposed to be ushered in there. She had had, by the way, a fight of some sort with the security, saying she must be in the hall. And then she switched to the other end. And then once we had that break, you remember we had 2 breaks. One was enforced, the other one was we were just breaking. The security decided, you know, that's one regret I had, that we didn't follow the rule. The second regret I have is that once we started asking the questions, and once she started screaming and shouting, I have to ask my question, I have to be hard, I have to be hard, and all that. If it were me, she would have been taken out of the hall. She should not have been there. If like you're now, we're in a studio. This is a production. You have clear rules. You set your times. You're the host. You say, the last question gets to be asked at 9:55. You have your producers there in your ear, who was supposed to be there for 1.5 hours. The president has already been gracious to 2 hours. His team is on me. They've sent me papers saying we gotta close. The president has to go. We don't know. Maybe the president needs to use the bathroom. He's human. Maybe the president has other things to do. He's already been extraordinarily gracious to us. And then comes one citizen who holds our passports and says, I'm a citizen, I must speak. 8 million of us are citizens.
But what you're saying does not reflect the president's address to the
Correct.
situation before he answered the question.
That's
he
what I'm-
said, as a citizen,
That's what I'm
she's
coming
at
to.
liberty. It's her right.
She says you should let her speak.
He was also particular about her gender.
And yes,
That he should
which
have
is-
gone softer because
which-
she's a woman.
which is you know, I think His Excellency is a statesman. His Excellency is the father of our nation, and he sets the bar, and he sets the example to all of us. He's incredibly gracious. He's a very kind man, and I think I'm happy too that people got to see that, because sometimes they try to caricature him as something different. But he's a kind-hearted man. He's a man who's willing to bend backward just to support his citizens, especially women. And that's what we saw on that day. But I have to say, and I want to say this with a very clear face, I found her antics rude and disrespectful, impolite. She's a citizen, and I respect her. And I'm grateful that she wanted to be part of the discourse.
What about
But
it was
you
rude
need
and
to have
impolite?
rules.
Siba.
It's a good question. I'm happy you asked that. So I'm a well-raised man. In our society, we have respect for each other. When our leaders are speaking, no matter what, President Biya is a fountain of honor. He's the highest office in the land. He's the highest official. I saw my brother Lama posted that our president is supposed to be servant. That's a misunderstanding of what servanthood means. It doesn't mean that you should disrespect him. He's the highest officer in the land. He's a man of incredible respect. If you don't respect your president, you don't respect yourself. That's the beginning of this, what makes us a nation.
Siba.
Let me finish. It's an important
Quickly.
question. After the question time had ended, and you were in the hall, after the question time had ended, I had announced that was the last question. Shut it down. His Excellency had responded to all the questions carefully. At the end of that, when His Excellency was still speaking, is when she stood up and started shouting. His Excellency was confused. You've seen the video. He said, why? This is a man who's just been out there speaking for 3 hours. Why is somebody misbehaving in the hall? She was screaming. She captured the attention of people. And then I turned to her. I want people to understand this, and the videos all will attest to this. I turned to her initially, and I said, I beckoned to her. I said, I did like this. I said, it's okay, like, you know, time, yeah. No, I for talk. Me a citizen no pay passport, I for talk. I was like, you know, and so His Excellency. Then obviously there were people there. Another thing I regret is the people who were, after His Excellency had given her the permission to speak, and I had said yes, she can speak. I regret all those people who were trying to take the mic away from her. That should not happen as well. And I never support physical violence of any kind. I don't beat my kids. I have a 15-year-old. I've never hit my kid. I don't believe in physical violence. This is my personal value. But what I consider rude was that there are many ways she could ask a question. She could have arrived on time. She could have sent a text. She could have reached out. But she thought at that moment that her views were somehow more important. And then she started with a basic accusation. By the way, I need to clarify this, because I think Dixon, if you were here, he will say, oh, she didn't say that you had not spoken about agriculture. She said you had not asked, no, like the questions had not been asked about agriculture. That's also factually untrue. As I've said here, every question that came, that I asked, came from citizens. So her voice is not more important than the citizens of Sierra Leone as well, who asked questions in agriculture. We had at least 50 questions in agriculture. I grouped them, I asked them. It had been asked. We had spent over 30 minutes with His Excellency speaking about agriculture. He spoke about the economy. He spoke about price, what she said. I asked His Excellency, I said, what are we going to do to control price and increase prosperity in this country? I said, people are suffering. We already asked that. We showed a documentary on agriculture. And she said, we'll not talk about, you know, ask about agriculture. So if you are also going to put up an antic like that, have something substantive to say.
Siba.
And add to the contribution, not take us back. And that's what she did, because I think she wanted a moment of fame. And as we've seen with her antic scenes, it's like this is somebody who's been trying to get, you know, this fleeting social media era where Olma want go viral for that moment.
Siba.
I want to add one thing.
Just
please.
quickly.
Let me just add one thing.
Good.
Everything I just said does not mean that anybody should target her, should attack her. I will, as I said to those men who are trying to take the microphone from her, we don't like that. That's not what we stand for. I think in an environment where we must have a debate, we should be able to speak to each other freely. I think what she did was impolite, and I stand by what I said on the day. But as I said, I gave her the microphone. I ensured afterwards that she was safe and she went home. Very fair. I also said to her, and this is something that we stand by, that if she wants more information, she should reach out to our ministry. We have different platforms and we can provide her that information. And we gave her a magazine, and we said we'll give her a magazine as well. So she can reach out to us for that. It's her right. We work for her. But just because I work for you doesn't mean you can be rude.
Siba, I know the lady is a student at Jala University in Bo. But again, many will say you have a very fine session on that day, save for the hula balu.
It's fine. It's part of the democracy.
I
I actually don't regret the episode. I think it's fine for people to see that.
But again,
because if we are stage manage it
but
all,
again, Siba,
then everybody there will be people that we had. They will be sitting there. They will be but
I think
people
that
should see that as well.
I think that was one of the moments.
That's
one of the moments that many will say makes the program itself a stage manage. But at some point in time, save for the president, who came in and said, allow her to ask the question, many will say, from the utterance this week, I was following the show, I was the main host here, monitoring the other studios and Bintomani. Many will say to some extent you are temperamental, and you're not that kind of person that many have seen on television, Siba.
If you listen to me, when I spoke to her,
I listen.
I was calm. You can watch the videos. My voice didn't go up.
It's like you say, take the mic, Nayan.
No, I didn't say that.
Really?
I never said that.
Okay.
In fact, I said not take the mic, Nayan. After His Excellency said she can ask, initially I told you, I was beckoning to her. We had eye contact. I told her no, time. I even did
Well,
this.
it's saddened by the fact that many people brought in politics into the hall, saying, now APC and all the rest.
That's fine. That's part of our... That's who we are in Sierra Leone. It's okay. And I said the way you beat fake news is not to argue with fake news. It's to just do better. And that's what we continue to do. This was one big way of doing that. We're going to do more and more every day. So I wasn't temperamental. I said to her, I said generally, and I was speaking to her, I held the mic like this, and I said generally, I don't reward your antics. If you come to my show, if you come to my event, anything I do, and not just in government, and you misbehave and act out of the line, I'm not going to reward you by giving you the mic. I will never do that. personally. I said, generally, I find your antics, I don't call her rude. I said her antics, what she was doing, speaking while the president was speaking, shouting at the president. I said, I generally found that rude and impolite. I said, but because His Excellency is the father of the nation and he's been magnanimous, we're going to give you 30 seconds and I'm going to let you speak. That's when those men were around her and trying to take the mic. And I said, stop. And I was screaming at the men and said, let her speak. She has the mic. And we allowed her to ask a question and they came back. So look, the people that know me, and you've said it, I don't lose my cool. I have not lost my cool on this issue at all. I was annoyed by it. I was irritated by it a little bit because I thought, you know, we have to behave. Because I thought what she did actually undermines our ability to hold such spaces in the future and not expand it. Because if you ask the leader of your country to come forward and say, come ask questions and sit down there for many hours, and we said we have rules and this is what's going to happen, he has a reasonable expectation. Just as you asked me to come to the studio, I have reasonable expectation to know that when I'm in the studio, this is how the questions are going to be asked and this is what. And if somebody keeps barging into the door and says, Siba, you should answer this, Siba, you should, next time I will not come to your studio. If I step outside of your door and somebody starts acting in a way that I don't expect, it makes it difficult.
Let's chip this in quickly as we talk about how that affects future. Ibrahim Tomi was here not long after the town hall. Part of his submission, he said, it's a good initiative, but it shouldn't be a one-off, and it shouldn't just be annually. He thinks it should be quarterly at different locations across the country.
That's our vision. Our vision is to do more and more town halls, but it's not going to be every day or every quarter with His Excellency. As you know, we've done quite a few town halls already. We did a big one with the Kush, on the question of Kush, and the Honorable Vice President.
He was specifically talking about the president and the people. I think
with the president, look, His Excellency does multiple engagements. When he goes on tours, he also does town halls. They're not as televised and as produced as ours, but he will continue to do those engagements. For the ministry's perspective, we're going to start with an ambition to do it at least once a year. So that on the second year mark, we'll produce another magazine, we'll report on what we've done, and hopefully His Excellency will give us the consent as well to come and sit down. And yeah, I agree with Mr. Tommy, who is an incredible and outstanding activist in this country, a man of great repute, is that we don't always just have to do it in free time. In fact, when we started planning this, our initial suggestion was to do it in one of the headquarter towns. But obviously there's just logistical issues, things like that. We will plan better. We will partner with you and you have all this experience, and we'll do it differently going forward. But our commitment, as I said, is for the people that are criticizing, you know, they said it's not the critic that matters. It's the man in the arena. It's the woman in the arena. We're in this arena and nobody can say that since we've been here, we have not contributed to pushing the extent, the levers on transparency and accountability and providing accurate information to citizens. Nobody can say. It's not often, by the way, you hear President Bill on any panel talking straight like that in Creole. For 3 hours in Creole. He put us here and we're changing the game. And the people are going to continue to criticize. They're going to criticize one party. They're going to say, oh, this man, oh, that lady, this, that. It was a 3-hour engagement. We can argue about what happened with that lady, but there's a lot more substance here to talk about, including His Excellency condemning a member of his own party, talking about hate speech, talking about what he's going to do about instability, talking about tripartite committee, there's a lot of substance that people did not have access to before. And that's what's going to strengthen our democracy. That's what's going to push this space forward.
And I don't know if that skipped me, but the Kush situation in the country, a member of his family has also been accused of being part of the Kush syndicate. Perhaps I didn't hear that, but that didn't come up for the president to be able to respond.
We don't ask gossip or hearsay. We're not going to put His Excellency on a platform and say, oh, your sister didn't say, one blogger say. That would be unfortunate. You have to, because you're talking about people's lives and people's reputations here. We are having millions of people.
So how did you capture the Kush situation in the conversation?
What his government is doing about. We asked first, when he mentioned 500,000 jobs, there was a big question about how Kush threatens the young people of this country and what he's doing about it since his declaration. He talked about all the steps. And then a question came from the hall again about what's the status on the emergency that he declared and what we're doing. And he said, definitely that there will be no sacred cows, and anybody that's caught with evidence will be prosecuted. So that's how he answered that. And he also talked about rehabilitation, the hundreds of kids. He told a personal story about a woman who had been to Ghana and other places trying to seek medication for her child who was addicted with Kush, but only in Sierra Leone with our rehabilitation centers that the child had recovered. So he spoke eloquently as well about that, and he spoke about all the other steps that we're doing, including providing public information. He said that the price of Kush has gone up significantly, and that the cost of it is higher because of the work that he has done. So his commitment is total. And so when you say a member of his family, if I start with a foundation and I'm going to ask him, again, if this person that you're referring to had been indicted, then we can ask that question. If there had been evidence provided that's incontrovertible, then we'll ask that question.
But the allegation is it's
the
connection to the presidency that's preventing a probe into
But nobody
affairs.
has brought evidence forward that I have seen, and I will follow this conversation. Again, I've said to you before, Fabian, you're an incredible lady. You stand out in the society. Somebody's going to write one day online that Fabian did do this and Fabian did do that. So
and Fabian is not above the law.
But yes, but
it would be a favor on Fabian to be investigated.
Yes, but I'm not going to come on national television platform to repeat that allegation against you, because that's also giving fuel to that allegation. That's libel as well, as you know that very well. So if there was substance to the allegation, the police said they have looked into it and they have seen nothing. And this is a citizen who deserves to be protected just as any other citizen. And we're not going to do that. Because what then stops me from now saying, oh, they don't say, oh, this person, oh, this other person, oh, this person, this. I don't want to be, personally, that's not our commitment. That's not what we want to do.
Okay. Fabian.
For the time, we'll just read out a few messages, and we apologize in advance for that. And we could get the minister to respond. Kuyobobo says, why spend 1 billion when the president could just do the conference at the city hall, at the city council hall, and take questions from the media? Sorry, we'll just read like 2-3 of those messages and get your response to them.
Simple, man. It's like
Alus Pature says, Mr. Minister, you start calling the poor lady rude, and you wanted to twist this entire issue. All we want, Mr. President, was answering that town hall meeting is just a fictions, nothing to write home about. He made more promises more than any president in the country.
Ronald George Stone says there's nothing wrong with anyone asking critical and objective questions about issues that affect them. To be seen as rude or against the party, you are supposed to allow members of the audience to ask the questions themselves instead of you.
Paul Kanu says pre-recorded questions, but a single strong lady was able to expose it. Siba needs to apologize to that lady for branding her rude.
Mosdi says, I'm not judging you, Minister, but your temperament does not match a democratic style of governance. You look Getwamat, Mr. Minister.
Mosdi says, Samboy Casanova, the very best quality of a true leader is how you are able and capable of dealing with every situation that comes your way. Whether she was rude or not, the leader's response should not match that of the commoner.
Vicky V.S. Kalon says, citizens should not be rude to their leaders. Donald Trump has.
ADBC says, you guys are behaving as if you're doing us favor by allowing us to talk to our president, someone we elected, that we pay with our taxes.
My final pick is from Stan Heron, who says, this man thinks Salona, North Korea. I hope the woman that asked the president question is safe.
Last for mine is from Usram Kamau, who says, when rhetoric becomes an anthem in politics, it derails the road towards national unity and security for sustainable peace. Tolerance should be an attribute of a leader to accommodate criticisms, especially when it comes to human behavior.
Please allow me, for fairness, to add Med Kaba, who says, the rudeness of Sierra Leoneans can be seen on the social media. Your response to the messages.
You ask about the amount, we say it, and somebody say, why if you spend 1 billion? This is I mean, if we did it at Freetown City Hall, does the person know how much it cost? If you provided water, and you pay for the sound system, which you need to pay for. You pay for broadcasting. You pay the community stations to carry you already more than 1 billion. We were able to do it at such incredibly limited, really minor cost because of the generosity of our partners, including AYV. Imagine if AYV had charged us for 4 hours of uninterrupted television and the time of their superstar host and all of that. Instead of people saying, oh, what a cost, somebody says, oh, why for spend 1 billion? So we should not spend any money in this country, even to advance our democracy, we shouldn't. And somebody says, oh, you ought to have. I'm sorry to this person, but the person doesn't, I respect the person's opinion, but the person was not in the position to organize this event, and they have not done it before. We organized it based on our research and our studies and what we did, and we were transparent. We came here, we were on the media, we did a frequently asked questions, we were transparent about what it was going to be, and we focused on the substance. That's what we'll do. On the question of, again, the safety of the lady and the citizen, as I've said multiple times, I respect her as a citizen of this country. I'm grateful that she has a voice, and we all live in a society where we have a voice, where we can say this. I insist that that does not mean you can scream at the leader while he's speaking, especially not on an event that's organized with very clear rules, and you subscribe to those rules by attending those events. So I stick with that. I don't, I have no regrets on that. I stick with that. I think somebody was saying, oh, rudeness of Sierra Leoneans and all of that. As I've said before, I actually don't think Sierra Leoneans are rude. There were over 1,000 people in that hall. One person behaved in a bad way. One. Not a reflection of our country. 1,000 people sent questions. 99% of them were good. It's also very bad. It's logically wrong to paint the rest of the very decent, kind-hearted people who actually have genuine concerns, are believed to play by the rules, who work hard and all, to put all of these people in the same category as one person who wanted a moment of fame. I don't agree with that. I don't think the people of this country are rude. I think what we saw, and then the other person said, well, as a leader, you have to not reflect the moment. I think, again, you want your leaders to be honest and direct, and I will be who I am, and I will act in a way that I believe is consistent with what my values are. I was raised well. You don't scream at no less a person than the president of your country. Talk less of an elder, somebody who's old enough to be your dad. That's our culture here. We don't do that. But to the person's point, His Excellency the President, who's the first gentleman of the nation, he took the very, very high road. He said, I'll let her speak. She's a citizen. She should talk to me. I know she doesn't get a chance to do that every day. And said, I know she's a woman and I've done a lot for women. So to the person's question has been answered. The leader, who is His Excellency the President, set the tone for all of us. And said, and after His Excellency said that, we allowed her to speak. So I think what I don't want us to get distracted by is, as I said, 5 minutes or less of madness, of distraction. It's the substance of this. It's the millions of people that tuned in all across the country. It's the generosity of partners like AYV, who also carried it live again yesterday and allowed citizens who missed the chance to watch it. I'm sure SLBC is going to do multiple reruns over the next few weeks as well to ensure that citizens will have access to it. And when you listen to it, every time you listen to it, you hear something. I was on the stage there speaking to successfully. Just watching it last night, I had things that I didn't really fully, appreciated, as he was saying. There's so much there. And yes, it was imperfect. Everything we'll do will be imperfect. But I have no doubt in my mind that last week, we took an extraordinary step towards perfecting our democracy, to creating a culture where we hold our leaders to account. And yes, we're not going to do it. Everybody is not going to. Look, even if we did everything that everybody just said on that, today, there will be exactly the same comments on social media. That's why I'm not worried about those comments.
Thank you so very much, Chernoba. He's the Minister of Information and Civic Education, and he's been speaking on the recently held National Town Hall meeting by President Bill, organized by his ministry, Information and Civic Education. It's a pleasure having us always, Chernoba.
Thank you so much for having me always. And thanks again to AYV and to you, particularly Fabian, for anchoring on the day, and to you as well for anchoring here in the studio. It's always a pleasure to work with you guys to advance a transparent and a free democracy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.